Hi, my name's Dion Morton. I'm the Barling Chair of Surgery at the University of Birmingham, and I'm the co-director of the NIHR Global Surgery Unit, which provides research through a network of surgeons across the world. It is my great pleasure to talk to you about the opportunity of transforming patient lives through collaborative surgical research. I would say that collaboration is vital for the development and implementation of advances in surgery, and the collaborative community across the world will play a vital role in the transformation of surgery over the next decade. Where are we now? I would say to you that it is a most exciting time for surgical research. We are entering a period of rapid change. That change will come through innovation at the interface of technology and new pharmacology advances. That can happen in cancer and in inflammatory bowel disease, for example, but also in many other forms of surgery, such as orthopedics, where new technologies will improve mobility and joint replacement. We will also see transformation in how we treat the individual patient. Really, in surgery, we have been treating patients all the same, and people have started to talk about personalized medicine. I think we should be talking more about personalized surgery, giving the right operation to the right patient at the right time. In addition, we are going to see reduced harm from surgery, safer surgery, surgery delivered through minimal access with optimized patients before and optimized recovery for patients after their operations. This will transform patient lives. We must not ignore the challenge. I would argue that surgery is the greatest challenge in global health today. Our own data, published in The Lancet from the network of surgeons across the world, showed that post-operative deaths within 30 days of surgery exceed the combined deaths of the three major infectious diseases, tuberculosis, HIV, and malaria, every year. And this is not improving. Advancing surgical care encompasses three themes that I would like to address. Improving the selection of patients for surgery, stratifying the patients as to their likely benefit and the risks of the surgery can improve the delivery of surgery to these patients. Introducing new technology through collaboration with others, with engineers and specialists for implants, stents, and image guidance, or improving perioperative care with colleagues in different disciplines, multimorbidity being the key current topic. All of this requires multidisciplinary teams and cannot be delivered by surgeons alone. The role of surgical research, I would argue, is to build functional multidisciplinary teams, and collaborative research is the way to deliver this. That way we can share best practice between colleagues, between hospitals, and rapidly evolve care systems. We can provide the high quality evidence from research that will accelerate the implementation of these changes. But perhaps most importantly, collaborative research allows us to change practice in real time. And I would like to give you an example of this. One of our resident surgeons in the United Kingdom, Lizzie Lee, led this trial, the EAGLE trial. And the EAGLE trial looked at implementing a complex intervention to reduce anastomotic leak following right-sided bowel anastomosis. This study was carried out across the world in 67 countries at 371 hospitals. It involved the safe anastomosis online training modules, of which there were 5 modules. And this is still accessible at this website if you're interested in looking at it. It takes about 2 to 3 hours to complete the training. The training comprised a first module of risk stratification for anastomotic leak to highlight to the patient and the surgeons the high-risk patients where they need to be cautious about performing an anastomosis. The second was the introduction of a safe anastomosis checklist. This was for the whole theatre team to be engaged in and was carried out just before the anastomosis was performed. And the third component was surgical technique, preparing for the anastomosis, doing a stapled anastomosis, and doing a hand-sewn anastomosis. The results are summarized in this table, and importantly, we pre-specified looking at 3 different groups of hospitals. Those hospitals where 50% or more of the surgeons or less of the surgeons undertook the training, where 50 to 80% undertook the training, and where 80% or more undertook the training. And when we looked at this different engagement with the modules, we found this actually correlated strongly with the implementation of the safe anastomosis checklist and the risk stratification across these 3 groups, rising from 34% up to 52% implementation. But most importantly of all was the impact on the patients. And here we saw that the risk of anastomotic leak was halved from 11.8% in those centres where less than 50% of the surgeons undertook the training, down to 5.5% where 80% or more of those surgeons undertook the training. And actually this was seen both before and comparing before and after in those centres where they undertook the training midway through, as well as comparing between the randomized centres. A very strong finding. But we did wonder if this was an anomaly of research and not really translatable into the real world. So we undertook a second study, Eagle 2. In Eagle 2, another 330 hospitals undertook the study and 60 countries were involved. In this study, it was not randomized, but it was actually a cohort study, a real world study. And up to today, over 10,000 surgeons have now visited the training site. What the Eagle 2 study found is that there were about 1 in 5 patients where the main operating surgeon had not completed the online training, and about 78% of patients where they had undertaken the online training. And what we found was the same as in Eagle 1. 9.8% leak rate in those where the surgeon had not undertaken training, and that reduced to 5.5% in those where they had undertaken the training, correlating entirely the results of Eagle 1. So I think that highlights how you can change practice in real time. That study was carried out during COVID and took about 18 months to complete, and we saw practice change in real time. So how did we get here? How did we get to this position of developing collaborative research across the world between surgical units? And I think we need a big thank you to Dr. Richard Horton, of course, the senior editor in The Lancet. What Richard did is he published a commentary in The Lancet in 1996, and here he compared surgical research to a comic opera. And what he was highlighting is that surgeons were too wrapped up in case series and presenting their own results instead of looking at how they might improve the results for other patients. And that, I think, was a stimulus to delivering multi-center research, multi-center randomized controlled trials in surgery, something that many of us got involved in over the subsequent years. But I think a really important development was the actual UK trainee, what we would now call resident, network of surgeons. And these collaborative networks were set up all across the United Kingdom about nearly 20 years ago. And these collaborative research projects started with cohort studies and then actually carried out randomized controlled trials. This was the first such trial, the Rossini trial, involving about 20 centres across the United Kingdom, and it tested a wound edge protection device to try and reduce surgical site infection. The first thing we showed is that through this collaborative research, we actually recruited ahead of target by 3 months. This is unheard of in randomized controlled trials, I would suggest, and it becomes a common feature of collaborative research because you engage a wide number of surgeons in undertaking these studies. The second, another multi-centre trial carried out across about 25 hospitals in the United Kingdom was the DREAMS trial, which involved collaboration between anaesthetists and surgeons to reduce post-operative nausea and vomiting using dexamethasone. This actually showed a highly significant reduction and led to this being highlighted as a recommendation in NICE. The trainees even worked together to introduce new innovation and techniques in surgery. And I can remember the resident surgeons going out to different sites, not just in the UK, but also abroad in Denmark, to show how you could use absorbable mesh to reinforce closure of stomacite. And this paper actually showed a highly significant reduction in subsequent post-operative incisional hernia, and was published in The Lancet. The work of these trainees did not go unnoticed, and the Royal College of Surgeons of England actually raised money through philanthropy, notably the Rose Trees Foundation as well as others, to fund dedicated surgical research units where the trials units would support surgical research, and appointed senior leads in each surgical discipline to lead multi-centre collaborative research, exploiting the power of the trainee collaboratives across the United Kingdom. Highly successful innovation by the Royal College, and this actually led the trainees again to lead, the same trainees to lead this research across Europe and wider Europe, and these first studies were carried out through the European network. And then the next generation of trainees, led by Neil Bangu and Dmitry Napogdiev, amongst others, led to the establishment of the Global Surgery Network. And this network started doing research across the world, involving nations across low and middle income countries. This led the NIHR to actually support the development of the Global Surgery Unit, which is meets every year and has been established now for 10 years. And this unit is led by 7 directors across 3 continents. And the research they have carried out has actually been transformative for patients and forms the largest scientific collaboration of researchers ever brought together, and now numbers some 40,000 surgical practitioners across the world, performing the largest cohort studies and largest randomized controlled trials. So I'm delighted to say that Richard Horton, a surgical collaboration now looks like this. This is the GECKO study. It actually, these are just the national leads across the world, who you'll notice, apart from a few exceptions, are all very young surgeons, all working together to improve the outcomes of their patients. This was a study of gallbladder surgery. So the question really we're raising is, can collaborative research drive better surgical care for our patients? And I think the answer is a resounding yes. The need is enormous, as we've said. The global unmet need for surgery is at least 160 million operations per year. This work was carried out by the Global Surgery collaboration across the world, and that collaboration was that work was published in The Lancet. And it shows that not only are there 160 million operations a year required that are an unmet need, but that figure is rising because of better life expectancy and more chronic non-communicable disease across the world. One way of increasing surgical capacity is to do safer surgery with less complications. That can actually increase capacity by reducing the resource usage on patients having adverse outcomes and requiring further treatment. This is the CHEETAH trial led by colleagues in Birmingham and in Rwanda. The CHEETAH trial was a cluster randomized trial of sterile gloves and instrument change before you close the wound after clean and contaminated surgery. 81 hospitals across 7 countries took part in this study and recruited over 13,000 patients. And what the CHEETAH study showed is that changing gloves and using clean instruments prevented 1 in 7 wound infections. And that prevention of wound infections was shown across all the different sensitivity analyses that were performed. A separate publication on the health economics of this intervention showed it is highly beneficial to patients and cost effective. And as a consequence, that study is being implemented through policy change in Nigeria, in Benin, through leadership from the Association of Surgeons in Rwanda, and through a study being launched by the ICMR, funded by the ICMR in India. In fact, the findings from this study are now feeding back into high-income countries, and this intervention is being currently evaluated in the United Kingdom. So, what does the future look like in terms of global research? I would like to say the future looks strong and exciting. Despite the many challenges, we are launching a new platform, the first platform trial in surgery, in global surgery, a stratified multi-arm, multi-stage randomized platform trial. It's exploiting the opportunity to randomize patients before surgery, during surgery, and after surgery, so that each patient can actually be randomized 3 times. And this study looks like a 9-arm study where we are looking at preoperative bathing or showering in chlorhexidine, intraoperative irrigation of the wound before closure, and postoperative active wound dressing to look at the outcomes. And the study is able to look not only at these 3 interventions individually, but also combined, and see whether there is a benefit for these patients. The study is now open and recruiting in Rwanda and is about to open in India. I would like to highlight to you the next global surgical collaborative cohort study, SurgeWeek 2. It seeks to be the largest ever surgical evaluation of all surgical specialties in May to June of 2026. The details of this study, which will look at all surgery performed worldwide and will provide 30-day outcomes on a wide range of surgical procedures. It will benchmark your outcomes globally. It will allow evaluation of advances in surgical quality and patient safety, and will provide a benchmark for surgical practice going forward across the world. I would encourage you to participate, and there'll be announcements soon around this new study. So finally, what of the future? I would say to you that we are entering a period of unparalleled change in surgery. Procedures will be made safer, but that safety will need to be evaluated through large multi-center international trials. Patient selection will require the collection of big data to look at risk stratification of patients and more accurate risk stratification against potential benefit for these patients, so we can better inform our patients before surgery. And looking at exploring faster and safer recovery from surgery. There are many challenges. These will include a few of the following. We will need to retain non-elective skills as we move towards minimal access surgery within the elective setting. Unplanned procedures and the emergence of emergency surgical skills as an important and growing specialty. I think we can anticipate that over the next few years. We need to better integrate surgery into a whole patient care pathway. And we need to look at our health system structures in high and low income countries so that patients undergoing surgery, we can maximize their long-term benefit from these interventions. We need to look at staffing, particularly at recruitment and retention. There will be a relationship between the technician and the clinician as surgery starts to use more and more highly complicated interventions and technologies. We will need technicians to maximize their use, and we will need to look at the relationship between the clinician and the technician in delivering these interventions. I would say the most important thing is that the evaluation and implementation of this rapid change will require professional leadership, and it is important that the profession as a whole is seen to provide that leadership so it is implemented for patient benefit and not imposed upon a strained health system. Collaborative research, I believe, will be at the center of these changes, sharing best practice, evaluating innovation, and disseminating and implementing the findings. I look forward to watching these changes and watching the collaboration across the world deliver these changes to the patient's benefit. Thank you.